Do you all like my Fidel hat? Do you like my Fidel hat? Does everybody like my Fidel hat? What's up, brothers and sisters? It's another episode of Movie Epidemic. Here we are at Fantasia Fest once again, and we have many more movies to cover. It just seems like they never end. It seems like they never end. The movies never end, it seems. First up, we got a little movie called Kriya. Kriya. Can you tell I've been listening to the pronunciation guide on YouTube? Kriya. I don't even know if that's right, to be honest. I typed it in, and sometimes those are gags. Sometimes those pronunciation videos are gags. Anyway, this is an Indian horror movie that takes place over the course of one night, and it happens to a little DJ that we'll call Neil. I believe it's Neil. It's Neel, which I think is the name Neil. That's what they kept saying, but it could be Neil. Or something. I didn't watch the pronunciation guide on that, so I don't know. This is a movie that kind of is, it's a horror movie. It's often stated that it is a nightmare odyssey. They keep putting that into the promotional material, which is precisely why I chose to watch it, but it doesn't really live up to that promise per se. It certainly has some spooky spiritual aspects of it, as it covers kind of the death of a father in the Hindu religion, but they add some black magic to the mix. They do add some black magic to the mix, that is for sure. Cat eating kibble, cat eating kibble. This movie starts off in this DJ's playing a set at a club, and it goes on for way too long. It goes on for like 10 minutes of just like people dancing in a club. I get it. It's a club. You've established your shot. We're in a club. I understand. Completely understand where you're coming from. We're in a club. 10 minutes goes by. He meets this girl, Sitara, and she's like, come back to my place. We'll do some stuff. So he goes back there, and it's like a giant mansion. He's like, I don't think I should come in here. It seems like you live in a castle. It seems scary. It seems like something I shouldn't do. If you go back to a girl's house and she lives in a scary castle that seems like there might be demons inside, just don't go. You don't have to go. You don't really have to go. You don't have to go at all. If you don't want to go, you don't have to go. So they get there. They realize the father is dead. He's shackled up. He's a Rusty Shackleford. He's really shackled. He's shackled up. And I don't know if that's part of it. Like, I didn't know if that was part, because this is an exploration of religion, specifically the Hindu religion. And I didn't personally know if they were supposed to be shackled up, but as we find out, there might be a little bit of a demon inside of them. There might be a little bit of a demon inside of them. The family consists of the mother. I guess he's some sort of a priest that is in love with the mother. You've got the daughter, Sarah, and you've got I guess she's a servant or a maid or something. She delivers a lot of the early exposition. This is a movie that is kind of similar to, I would say, Hereditary. It is like a family-oriented movie where there are some black magic at play. And so at the beginning of the film, it states that in the Hindu religion, the son is supposed to do the last rites. And in this family, there's only Sitara and Sarah, and neither of them are a son. So technically, they can't do it, but they coerce Neil into performing the last rites. Now, this is a very important movie to Fantasia Fest, because for me, this was the first time we see a penis, the first time we see a witch finger. We got a 1 witch finger count in this festival so far, and I'm hoping that we can get to more, because it wouldn't be a film festival without a lot of male genitalia, and that's what we're looking for. While this movie is advertised as a nightmare odyssey, there are only occasional flashes of like spooky shit that's happening. Neil sees his father as like a blood-soaked man trying to tell him something, maybe trying to tell him to escape. I don't know. Eventually you see kind of more complexly scary stuff as Sitara somehow puts the spirit of her father into Neil. This is, like I said, this is similar to Hereditary at the end of the day, when it is like a body swap movie of this. I think they called him like the the angel of death or like the deity of death or something, and that's who's in the father, and he needs a new vessel. He ostensibly needs a new vessel. So as they're doing the black mass ritual for his death, there is a body swap that happens. And this is towards the end of the film. To me, I think maybe I want to explore that a little more. Maybe I want to explore what happens when Neil is kind of in his body, but also another being is in there. A flesh-eating monster that assaults his wife and stuff. I don't know. I kind of wanted more from this movie. It's a sloppy and meandering script with even sloppier acting. Like, the acting is really, really bad in this movie. Especially since the Neil character delivers half of his lines in English for some reason. It's fine, but you can really tell that he's not that good of an actor, especially when he's trying to speak in English for some reason. I think there's some cool ideas here and some cool visuals. At the end of the day, it doesn't really amount to much. I didn't hate watching it, but also I didn't enjoy that much of it. There's just like, it's a little too, maybe if I knew more about the culture, I think maybe it's just like, maybe I'm just missing something that needs to be here for me to understand what's going on. But I don't know. I didn't enjoy it that much. I'm going to give this one a 2-star. All right, everybody. Our next film is Mermaid in Paris. Now, this is a little movie distributed by Sony and Columbia International. And I was looking at that production logo, and I'm like, this is some big shit. Something about this movie got some international distributors being like, we need to take this. And I looked it up, and it's a film by a man of the name Mathis Mazul. And now, I'm not familiar with this person. I don't know much about French culture. I know the language a little bit. Just by being a Canadian, but I don't know much about French culture. This guy is in some sort of band, and he's got a chaotic aesthetic from what I can see. He's always surrounded by like old school toys and stuff. And that was one thing I was wondering about this movie, is that this guy, Gaspar, who's the main character of this movie, his house is a fucking mess, man. There's like 1,000 rubber duckies in it. There's fucking old school toys everywhere. I was like, what's going on here? And I think it is just the aesthetic of this Mazul person. But I mean, he seems like a talented weirdo, because this is a good looking movie despite the chaoticness of this man's house. So this book opens up with a really cool claymation intro, and it explains about the secret society called the Surprisers, and they're like I guess a secret society for artists. And I guess if you really think about it, artists are the only ones who can really have a secret society, because we don't give a shit what artists are doing. We don't care what they're doing. We don't care what artists are doing. In this whimsical-ass movie, we've got Gaspard Snow, who's a lounge singer at his father's bar/restaurant/ hangout for artists that's on a boat. It's kind of like a weird setting, but it is like a fantasy type world. There, for example, there are mermaids in this film. So Gaspard's like a down on his luck guy. He's been heartbroken. His mother died, and she wanted him to complete the Surprisers like special book or whatever, and he's never been able to do it because he hasn't found love yet. Oh, so sad. So sad. He can't move on. Just in time for him to find a mermaid dying on the road beside his father's boats. And it is kind of funny that when he first grabs the mermaid, because she's hurt, he's like, we got to take her to the hospital. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not the first place I take a mermaid. You know where I take a mermaid? I take a mermaid to my friends studying cryptozoology. That's where I take it, because we're going to make a big find here. This is about capitalism. Friends. We've made a big find here. Anyway, he takes her to the hospital, and at the hospital, this doctor comes out to the car and looks at her, and she starts singing her siren song, and his heart explodes. Because apparently what happens when you hear a mermaid sing is that her siren song fills you with so much love that your heart explodes. But it doesn't work on Gaspard. Our friend Gaspard here, it doesn't work on, because he's so heartbroken and will never love again. Wow. How could this be? How could this be that he'll never love again when there's a mermaid right there singing her siren songs? While this is like a whimsical-ass movie, there are very sinister undertones to everything that's happening because for the fact that the mermaid's killing people. She's killing a lot of people. Killing so many people. This sets off a chain of events where the wife to the doctor is trying to investigate to figure out what's going on. Gaspard eventually takes the mermaid to his house, keeps her in the bathtub, is trying to heal her, so he doesn't want to take her back to the ocean, but she says in like 42 hours or whatever, she's going to die if she's not back in the ocean. As Gaspard goes out for the day and leaves her there, the nosy neighbor keeps coming in and starts doing exposition about the whole life of Gaspard and how he was so heartbroken and everything. Eventually, the mermaid tries smoking because the movie's so French and burns down the apartment. It's not really that important, but I just wanted to throw it in there because I like the idea of the mermaid smoking because it's us the French. It's us the French film. That feeling when you're kind of just like minding your own business and then a mermaid starts singing to you and you're like, I'm having chest pains. This is a crazy episode because I don't want to talk about these movies at all. There are some really cool visuals in this movie. Because it's kind of a musical, they do get into like some cool underwater acts. They do a few songs in this movie. They do a few songs together. Eventually he starts falling in love with the mermaid, of course, and they start writing songs for the radio, I guess. But that to me, I'm like, aren't you going to murder like millions of people when they hear this on the radio? But that's never addressed. Don't worry. This is a beautiful film. This is a beautiful film about love. Eventually, the doctor's wife catches up with them and kidnaps her, where they almost immediately escape. It's like very easy to escape the clutches of a doctor's wife, apparently. And basically, they escape to the edge of the world and have a wonderful time. It is honestly like a nice movie. To me, I put this one in there because after watching like 20 movies, I'm losing my fucking mind, as you can see from this review. I wanted something light and nice to break up the monotony of watching all these weird horror movies, basically. And I think from that standpoint, it's pretty good. This is based on Mathis Mazzuel's book. I guess he writes like kids books or something. Or maybe he just writes fantasy. I don't know. I don't know anything about this guy. But he seems interesting, that's for sure. He's even in this movie playing a little song at the boat at one point. I saw him playing a song at the boat. I'm like, there he is. There's the guy right there. That's him right there. From a visual standpoint, this movie's awesome. But I mean, it's pretty middle of the road. How good your mileage will vary, I think, with this one, depending on how much you're in the mood for just like a pretty basic. It's Splash. It's pretty much Splash. Just a basic rom-com with a mermaid, I'm going to give it 3 stars, though. I liked it enough. All right, up next, we've got Crazy Samurai Musashi. Now, this one I wasn't going to watch, but I just decided I should rent some more of these movies. Since they're just available on demand at this festival, I'll probably never get a chance to see this specific movie, where he fights 400 enemies in a single shot, which, in theory, I'm like, that sounds cool. I like movies that take place in one shot. If you don't really think about it, you don't think about how fighting 400 enemies in a movie, just like if you were to fight 400 enemies, let me see if I can phrase this right. If you were to fight 400 enemies, you wouldn't just go like 300 where you're just slashing down stuff. You'd fight methodically and slowly, and that's what this is. And I've seen this in many reviews, but it does kind of feel like you're following a LARPer. It kind of feels like you're watching a guy at a Renaissance fair methodically fight 400 enemies. And you're just kind of like following him with a phone. And it has like terrible special effects every time he cuts on. It's the fucking CGI blood. But it's like the same blood spurt every time. So clearly they just bought one of those green screen blood effects. It looks so bad. It's a bad-looking movie. It does star Tak, though. This guy is in a lot of cool underground Japanese movies, kind of weirdo horror movies. People like this guy. And to be fair, it's very impressive he was able to pull this off, where a camera literally was following him for 77 minutes as he was chopping down people. And he looks strong in this movie. He looks like he actually could cut down 400 people. He looks good as hell. But the problem is, I don't think I really want to watch that. I realized like 30 minutes into this movie, I'm like,
oh, this isn't for me. I don't think I want to watch this Renaissance fair ass bullshit for another 45 minutes.
And it just keeps going on with no story in sight. There's bookends that explain that, he's a crazy samurai, and they're going to send all these guys to kill him, and they're like, we can't do that. That's a bad look for 400 people to kill one samurai, and he's just slicing them, slicing. Eventually, you kind of see that every time he kills a bunch of people, they go and like change costumes and come back. So eventually you just start seeing him fighting the same people over and over again. So in theory, like, this is kind of a good idea, but like in execution, it doesn't really work, I don't think. I don't actually think this works, which is unfortunate because I think the idea is fun. A one shot of a guy killing 400 people, but it's like he occasionally fights like Grandmaster Samurais, but that lasts for like 3 minutes and he kills them. And like once it gets to the end, it gets a little better. To be fair, it gets a little better. He's fighting in the rain. He's doing like classic samurai duels, and that looks good. That looks good once they start getting the crane shots in there, but just a guy with a phone following a guy behind him, I don't know. He keeps bumping into shit too. Like in the promotional material, it says there's no room for error, no room for corny or unconvincing moves. What's more corny than following a guy with a fake sword killing people? I can't think of one. In the epilogue, it shows that he survived, and then the son of the previous guy comes to fight him once more. And in this scene, they do use cuts, and they do make it look like a regular filmed sword fight. And to me, that was so much better than all of the 77 minutes, and that was a 7-minute chunk. So it's just like, I get the intention, but I just don't think the execution is that great. Still a cool idea, and I respect them for making it and taking my $8, but I just, at the end of the day, I don't know if I would ever recommend this to someone because it simply is barely a movie. It is just a guy slicing down people in a forest, then he gets to a village, and that's it. At least in the village, though, because he's wandering through the forest, you don't really get to see the dead bodies. At least in the village, the bodies start to pile up. But I think if you were fighting like 400 guys, you'd really want to like have a lot of extras just piled up. I think that would have made it look a little more convincing to me, because it does feel so low budget. So I'm going to give this one 2 stars, but I enjoyed the idea of it nonetheless. So that's it for today, everybody. Go ahead and leave a comment if you want to see any of these movies, if you have seen any of these movies. Was I right? Was I wrong? I don't care if you are mean or not. I'm going to read it in the next episode if you write something. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read that shit. We didn't get any comments this week. It was a slow week. It was a slow week on the tube, everybody. Very slow week. But for more content, you can always follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Movie Epidemic. If you follow us there, you'll never miss a thing. You'll never, ever miss a thing. And that's all I've got for today. So see you guys on another time.
Why don't you play us something, baby? Why don't you play us something, baby?
Start? I don't feel so good.